Hello. El Salvador in Spanish means the Savior. And at this point in history, it looks like El Salvador could use a savior of its own. My guest is Felix Kury, who is one of 5 U.S. representatives to the Democratic Revolutionary Front of El Salvador. He was born in the United States. He was educated in El Salvador. He graduated from San Francisco State University with a bachelor's degree in international relations. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I know that your heart is in El Salvador as well as the United States. Can you tell us what is happening right now?
In El Salvador, we have a very terrible situation in which most of the people in El Salvador, 99% of the people of El Salvador, live under the most terrible conditions. Houses don't have running water. 1 out of every 3 children died before the age of 5. We have the largest unemployment in Central America. More than 40% of the people have out of jobs. And for the last 50 years, we have had a dictatorship. Our first uprising to change the social injustice ever since the Spaniards left Central America. We have our first uprising in 1932. That's when the dictatorship came into power, and they have been ever since. 30,000 people were killed then. And now we have the dubious records of having the longest military dictatorship throughout Latin America.
Has the dictatorship since 1932 done anything to improve the lot of the common person?
Throughout the years, we had never experienced any kind of social change. The people who own most of the land of El Salvador are only 14 families, and they're not, and they have not bring any kind of social change. We are living in a very feudal society, and so those are the conditions that have taken us at this time throughout the 70s. And we have tried through many peaceful means. We participated in elections 7 times in our history. Every time we found fraud, repression, and death. And so even in October of 1979, there was a coup d'etat, and most of the democratic sectors that participated in that first junta resigned 80 days after being in power, when they knew that those people who had been in control, who have the power, and who have been responsible for the assassinations of many Salvadorians, were still in control then. And so all those civilians left the government, left that first junta, and joined the Democratic Revolutionary Front, which is formed of many sectors of the society.
That would seem to be backwards to me. If you win the election, if I understood you correctly, that in 79 they won the election, they took power, and then they abdicated power?
No. In 1972, in 1977, to be most precise, and in those 2 times, we won elections. The opposition won the election.
Wait a minute, who won? Your side or the opposition?
We are considered to be in the opposition, the
All right.
Democratic Revolutionary Front of El Salvador, no? And so we won those 2 elections, but the military took away the ballots and repressed people, and there were fraudulent elections, proven, through international organizations that came to witness those 2 elections. In October of 79, some young military officers and some civilians, after a coup d'etat, the overthrow of the government of General Romero, who was a very repressive government also, joined hands and attempted through peaceful means being in this new government to bring some social change to El Salvador. So in October 79 through December 80, all through December of 79, I'm sorry, these people joined forces with the military officers, and in 80 days they proved themselves that it was impossible to have social change in a country in which the military are the ones in charge.
I see. We'll be back in a moment and we'll talk further about El Salvador. Our topic for this program is El Salvador, and my guest is Felix Kury. He is one of 5 representatives of the U.S. one of 5 U.S. representatives of the Democratic Revolutionary Front of El Salvador. When we left, you were explaining, and I want to just clarify this a little bit. Some of the military in 79, some of the people from your party did win the elections, but when they got to power, they found that they really didn't have the power to govern.
Look, I talked about 2 elections, 72 and 77. In October of 79, there was a coup d'etat by young military officers, and the opposition of the current government now joined hands and participated in that first junta, that first government that lasted from October of 79 to December of 79. So our people tried to bring social reforms in a peaceful way, attempting to have a bloodbath in the country. But the army, who had the control of the government and has always had the control, came to so many meetings of the National Palace and came there threatening the lives of those people that were in leadership in the government. And so these people have no other resort but to resign from that junta.
And they came to the meetings with loaded guns?
This is usually the case in El Salvador. People come to a meetings, they have shot fires at the National Assembly.
They have what fires?
They shot bullets at the National Assembly during a very heated debate. This is a part of the history of how the military runs and intimidates anyone who has any kind of opposition to the government.
You mentioned the 14 ruling families who own all the land, so to speak. I don't quite understand, with the military in control, what's in it for them? If they're not members of the 14 ruling families, so the military doesn't have the wealth, so why does the military keep backing these 14 families?
See, one of being a president of a country such as in El Salvador or any other country in Latin America, becoming a president make you a millionaire overnight. And so you don't necessarily become part of these 14 families, but you come...
You're the 15th
You're
family.
the 15 families, yes. So this is why every young military officer, they have gone through the National Military Academy, not the poor who are forced to join the army, join the military academy in order to be president of El Salvador someday.
All right, well, now we've talked about the president, but it takes more than one man to keep a military group. What about the rest of the officers that are in the hierarchy of the military? Do they also become instant millionaires?
And this is what also that we want to say to the American taxpayers, because your taxpayers are being used in El Salvador, first of all, to maintain a government that is very repressive. They have conducted a policy of genocide, and most of these military who hold offices have big accounts in the banks in Florida. And so everybody takes advantage of this. So it's a question of power and a question of leadership and so on. So the army of El Salvador has approximately about 32 or 30,000 regular members.
How many United States citizens do you think are in El Salvador right now on behalf of the United States government?
Well, the official position of the administration is that they have 55 advisors. We don't know exactly how many are there. We know that those advisors who are there are participating directly in the military operations. They're not just there training the soldiers. They conduct the war. They participate in the meetings at the Joint Chiefs of Staff in El Salvador, and they actually conduct the whole strategy of the war. So the involvement of the United States in El Salvador is very big at all levels of the political and the social aspects of our lives. No? So the United States not only sends arms and sends advisors and helicopters and so on to the country, but at the same time they make decisions for El Salvador. So it was Mr. Stone, who is now the special envoy to Central America, who was the first one to announce in Miami that they were going to have new elections in El Salvador. So those decisions about what is there to take place in El Salvador are made in Washington before they're made in El Salvador.
Let's put up a shot of the size of the country of El Salvador superimposed on a map of Arizona, and we can see the size in relationship to our own Pima County, for instance. If we can get that map up. Actually, El Salvador has how many people?
It has 5.5 million people.
Here we are. Here's the map. And there you can see the state of Arizona, and the area in yellow, this rectangular looking area, is the size of Pima County. And superimposed with a wiggly woggly line is the country the size of El Salvador. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we really are not talking about a very big landmass. And how many people live in El Salvador?
Close to 5 or a little bit more. Before the war,
5 million?
5 million.
Yes.
Before the war, we talked about 5.5 million people and so. But after the beginning of the war, 3 years ago, more than 500,000 people have fled from El Salvador. They have fled their homes. They are either in Central America or here in the United States.
And that makes a good point to stop. We'll come back and we'll talk about the El Salvadorian refugee problem in the United States. My guest is Felix Kury. He is one of 5 United States representatives to the Democratic Revolutionary Front of El Salvador. He is a U.S. citizen. He was educated in El Salvador. The plight of the refugees.
Yes.
We have certainly read and heard about it. Most of us can hardly imagine ourselves in a situation so bad. Can you shed a little light on that?
Yes, I think we Salvadorians and the many thousands that had left El Salvador running out of the repression and the kind of persecution that is going on there come to the different countries. Some of them a lot of them come to the United States, because if they go to the bordering countries like Guatemala, those refugees will suffer the kind of repression there because it's a military dictatorship. And in the case of Honduras...
Like from the frying pan into the fire.
Right. And so the same with the case of Honduras, where there is also a military government there. So they come to the United States, and once they arrive, like in Tucson, Arizona, no?
Excuse me.
Then you have that Salvadorians are picked up by immigration and deported. This is a very serious situation, very sad, because we know the United States stands on the principle of human rights, according to the Charter of the United Nations on refugees status, and a lot of refugees are sent back to El Salvador. And to us, sending Salvadorians back to El Salvador is like sending Jews back to Nazi Germany. This is how we view the situation, and this is why we are in Arizona talking to people in general about the whole crisis and how do we see as solution to this crisis.
How many people do you think have made it through the Arizona border?
I don't have detailed information. We know that throughout the United States there are at least 500,000 Salvadorians that have arrived.
Recently?
Recently, yes. And many of them are just fleeing repression. They don't have the same rights of other refugees that come from other countries. And so they live in a very difficult situation. And most of them will go back as soon as there is peace in El Salvador, long-lasting peace. No?
Where does the East-West configuration enter this? Who are the Russians backing? Are they backing anybody?
Look, we totally disagree with this thing that is an East and West confrontation. The situation we describe based on the social injustice that have taken place in the country, and those are the reasons why we have entered the war. We actually did not look for war, it was imposed on us. So ever since the Reagan administration comes into power in January of 1980, no, immediately the Reagan team chooses El Salvador to be the first priority in foreign policy and says El Salvador, which has the size of your county, no, Pima County, becomes a threat to your national security. El Salvador is a very small country. We have no intentions, once a political solution can take place there, and it can only take place if we take part of that, because we represent a very broad sector of the population, no? And so we feel that this whole East and West confrontation is just another excuse to participate and cover and counter activities financed by the CIA and backed by the United States government, that we think with this illusion that they want to stop the creation of another Nicaragua in Central America, we feel that with their deep involvement in El Salvador, they actually are setting their ground for a new Vietnam in Central America. No?
Your official title is one of 5 United States representatives to the Democratic Revolutionary Front of El Salvador.
Yes.
Now, on the face of that title, it sounds very similar to other titles of either communistic or Marxist types of political parties. Does your party have any connection whatsoever with any communist or Marxist, Leninist, anything along those lines?
Look, our front, both front, we have the Democratic Revolutionary Front and the National Front for Liberation, the Farabundo Martí Front. And so we have the military and the political front as the opposition in El Salvador. And in those fronts, we have the social Christians, which are members of the Christian Democratic Party that were part of the government of Napoleon Duarte that was supported by the United States. Those people who had disillusions with that kind of policy, they left and joined the front. We have the social democrats are part of the front. We have people of the church, the Catholic University in El Salvador, the National University, the small medium business people are part of the front. You have a large sector of all the political parties, and also the Communist Party is part of that. But they're part as the social Christians, as the social democrats are also part of the front, as the church is part of that. But in El Salvador, anything that speaks, anybody who speaks against any kind of reform is considered to be a communist or subversive. That's how these 3 North American nuns and the social workers were accused of being communists. They received death threats and they were killed by those people now that are supported by your government.
We'll be back in a moment and we will talk about some perhaps new elections and the role of the Catholic Church in El Salvador. My guest is Felix Kury, and he is one of 5 of the United States representatives to the Democratic Revolutionary Front of El Salvador. Is there a solution? What is happening? Are there elections called for?
Since October of 1982, we made one of our first proposals to have negotiations, to have an open dialogue without preconditions. And for your information, in El Salvador, the sector who handed that proposal to the government of El Salvador and the National Assembly was the Bishop of El Salvador, the Catholic Bishop of El Salvador. So we have asked the need to do that. Recently, there had been meetings with Mr. Stone.
Now, Mr. Stone is
the U.S. envoy to
El Salvador.
to Central America, yes. First of all, we want to make clear that we don't consider Mr. Stone to be a mediator.
You do not consider
No, we
him.
don't, because of the deep involvement of the United States in the crisis in El Salvador and the conflict, and so therefore is one of the parts involved in the conflict. No, so we have asked about continuing negotiations and dialogue and have discussions with Stone, and we have proposed the city of Washington D.C., the capital of this country, where houses the Senate and the Congress from this country. So Americans can have their own representatives being witness of that process, and so they can tell and see for themselves who are the ones who are invested in maintaining the war and who are willing to stop it. No? And so the United States government has not answered in regards of that proposition of having meetings in Washington. No?
The Catholic Church is very powerful in all of Central America, and the Pope recently visited the Central American countries. Do you think that visit did any good, and do you think the Catholic Church can help pull the country out of this quagmire?
The Catholic Church in El Salvador, ever since 1969, they have making the poor to be an option. And so the first option to work with the poor, no, is an optional thing that they have done, and they're working with the poor, and they have,
So therefore they are in opposition to the 14 families.
they are in favor of a political solution. They acknowledge that we have a crisis, that we have a very social, very unfair, situation there, and that's why 11 Catholic priests have been killed in El Salvador, including the Bishop of El Salvador, Monsignor Oscar Romero. No? And so the Catholic Church has played a very important role. Now, the United States government and El Salvador says, well, the solution to the crisis is to go through elections. We feel that elections are a very important part of the settlement, but not necessarily the solution to the problem. They can be part of the overall plan to bring peace. But you see, in El Salvador, the elections has a history having fraudulent elections, and everyone, and I don't think the media has covered that in this country, that in El Salvador you have to have an ID card, and so when you go to the voting places, your ID card has a number, and so the voting card that you're given, that number corresponds to that ballot. And so you need that ID card to baptize your children, to go to the funeral parlor, to go to the bank. There are roadblocks, like every mile you might be stopped 3 times.
We have 1 minute left, so in other words, you wouldn't want to have to give up your ID card. It'd be a terrible calamity.
With the ID cards, people are forced to go to election because this is the only way that they can ensure that they can be protected. Even children who are 7 have to have an ID card with a number. No? So we feel that there is a dangerous course in how the Reagan policies are being conducted in Central America, and that the United States now has 2 options.
Which are very quickly.
One is to go through the path of negotiations and peace, or send troops to Central America. And we feel that Americans alone, as Central America, should participate and maintain these kind of discussions as we're having now.
Okay.
And I wanted to thank you for that.
My guest has been Felix Kury. We have been talking about El Salvador.
Ellen's Hair and Nails, done by Great Lengths Salon, 2540 North Tucson Boulevard.